Delightful lunch. We will be starting at 2:15, just a few more minutes. We really appreciate your patience, just ensuring that everybody. We're going to get us started to the last session of the 2025 Caribbean Travel Forum. As a reminder, the presentations that we have received approval for distribution from the respective speakers will be distributed within the next 24 to 48 hours, including the link to access the Caribbean Travel Trends report that was launched this morning. And we now turn into the topic of sustainability with a very special session, Sustainable Tourism in the Caribbean, Charting a Resilient Future. And I would like, if you can please join me as we invite to the stage Honorable Charles Fernandez and our host for Caribbean Travel Marketplace, Minister of Tourism, Antigua and Barbuda. And I'm going to also ask his panel to join us on stage. Ambassador Diane Black-Lane, Director of Environment, Antigua and Barbuda, Dr. Deborah Brosnan and Associates, Janella Bradshaw, Redonda Ecosystem Reserve Coordinator, Environmental Awareness Group, and Julio Camacho, Marine Ecologist, Consultant to National Parks Authority, Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you very much. And at this time, I would invite Honorable Charles Fernandez for some remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just start by saying that I feel so privileged to be up here with such a distinguished panel. Can we get a round of applause for them? I can tell you that I know from personal experience how committed and devoted they are to what they do, and this is why I insisted that we have to have them here today. So I am just giving the introductory remarks, but this is really where the meat of the effort is. So let me first extend a warm Antigua Barbuda welcome to all of you joining us for this very important session. As we gather here today, just about a week shy of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, we're reminded, painfully so, of the growing threats our region faces. In 2017, Hurricane Irma devastated the island of Barbuda, rendering it uninhabitable for the first time in over 300 years. Just days later, Dominica was nearly wiped out by Hurricane Maria. These are no longer once-in-a-century events. They're becoming frighteningly frequent. And they remind us that the intersection between climate resilience and tourism is not a future concern, but an urgent and present one. Sustainable tourism is no longer a buzzword. It's a regional imperative. Tourism remains the lifeblood of our Caribbean economies, yet we are among the most climate vulnerable regions in the world. If we are to chart a resilient future, we must rethink how we design, promote, and protect our tourism offerings. This includes confronting the harsh realities of climate change, challenging the outdated parameters of the Vulnerability Index, and amplifying our calls for climate justice, a conversation our Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, continues to lead with courage and conviction on the international stage. But beyond advocacy, we must act. And across the region, we are seeing encouraging signs of just that. Here in Antigua and Barbuda, Barbuda is emerging as a beacon for low-density, community-led, eco-conscious development. Redonda, once barren and overrun by invasive species, has now become a flourishing sanctuary for wildlife. One of the most extraordinary restoration success stories in the region. And through pioneering reef restoration projects, we are working to protect our maritime ecosystems while building resilience against the impacts of warming seas and stronger storms. These are not isolated stories, they are blueprints. Tourism is often celebrated as an engine of economic growth. But the question we must now confront is, at what cost? Around the world, we have witnessed the consequences of unsustainable tourism. Coastal degradation, over-tourism, the loss of biodiversity, and the displacement of communities left behind in the shadows of luxury developments. These are cautionary tales we must not repeat. Bob Marley once said, and I quote, "Some people feel the rain, others just get wet," end of quote. It's a poetic line, but in the context of climate change, it becomes a call to consciousness. We cannot afford to simply experience the impacts of climate change. We must respond to them with clarity, urgency, and purpose. Tourism, when approached responsibly, is one of our most powerful tools for sustainable development. It can drive green investments that create jobs while protecting fragile ecosystems, support local businesses and empower communities, ensuring prosperity is equitable, promote cultural preservation and global connectivity, fostering mutual understanding. In Antigua and Barbuda, sustainability is more than a goal. It is our guiding principle, and it's an economic necessity. We've embraced a 4-pillar strategy to support this vision. 1, collaborative development projects. Partnerships like the $200 million Nobu Beach Inn in Barbuda exemplify low-impact, high-value investment that harmonizes luxury tourism with environmental preservation. 2, public-private investment through the SURF Fund. The Sustainable Island Resource Framework finances climate resilience projects directly tied to our tourism sector. 3, destination stewardship. We're ensuring that investments benefit not just large enterprises, but also local artisans, entrepreneurs, and families. 4, governance through our Destination Stewardship Council, bringing together public, private, and community voices. This body ensures that all stakeholders have a say in preserving our natural and cultural wealth. But all of this cannot be possible without our greatest resource, our people. Employees play a crucial role in promoting sustainability within the tourism industry. And here's how they factor into this important effort. 1, local employment and economic benefits. Employing local residents helps distribute the economic benefits of tourism more equitably, supporting community development and reducing inequality. 2, cultural preservation. Employees who are rooted in local cultures can help promote and preserve cultural heritage, ensuring that tourism respects and maintains local traditions rather than eroding them. 3, environmental stewardship. Staff trained in sustainable practices can minimize environmental impact, such as waste reduction, energy conservation, and responsible resource use by implementing eco-friendly operations. And 4, customer education and engagement. Employees can serve as ambassadors for sustainability, educating our tourists about responsible behavior, conservation efforts, and respecting local communities and environments. 5, operational efficiency. Well-trained employees can optimize resource use, reduce waste, and improve overall operational efficiencies, contributing to the long-term viability of tourism establishments. 6, innovation and improvement. Engaged and motivated staff can drive innovations in sustainable tourism practices, helping businesses adapt to new challenges and opportunities. And 7, building trust and reputation. Satisfied and well-treated, well-paid, well-trained employees contribute to positive guest experiences, fostering loyalty and enhancing the reputation of sustainable tourism initiatives. So as we can see, employees are vital agents of change within sustainable tourism, ensuring that tourism development benefits local communities, protects the environment, and offers meaningful experiences for locals and visitors alike. Investing in employee training and engagement is essential for achieving these sustainability goals. You know, we have a saying, we can't move from a sugar plantation model to tourism plantation model. Finally, this is not just about surviving or getting over these challenges. It's about rebuilding stronger, smarter, and more sustainably for today and the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Fernandez, for those words to kind of like set the stage to continue the conversation. And I know that There will be lots of best practices shared about the wonderful work that has been done here in Antigua and Barbuda from a sustainability perspective. And at this point, I will ask, one second, our first panelist, Ambassador Diane Black-Lane, to join us. Proceed. Whichever way you prefer.
Good afternoon. So I'll just sit here, if that's okay. Make it more like a conversation. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Minister, for inviting me. I was a little bit surprised when I got the invitation, because actually my day job is the director of the Department of the Environment, and that entity is the one that controls the environmental impact assessment process. And in many of our countries, the EIA process is not a nice one for some developers. And we can see that there's been in the past a lot of conflicts. Over the past, I think, 10 years, we have reviewed almost 31 environmental impact assessments. There have been some controversy, but what we're seeing is hoteliers and developers embracing the idea of the environmental impact assessment. And what does the environmental impact assessment done is a risk assessment approach, and we're able to be one of the few countries in the Caribbean where now we're seeing hoteliers and so on embracing that idea. And that is important signal to us and to developers that we are now beginning to understand that we have to develop with the environment in mind. Mm-hmm. The government of Antigua and Barbuda have made sure that the staff of the Department of Environment in Antigua and Barbuda is bigger than almost any other country in the Eastern Caribbean. And it goes to show the commitment of the government to environmental protection. Of course, there's a balance that has to be struck, and there's always a conversation around that, and a debate, as I say, between protection and development. And all of us here on the panel have had that conversation. Sometimes it's a good conversation, and sometimes it isn't. And that's just the way it is. But what we're seeing is that a conversation is occurring, and that is a good thing. The government of Antigua and Barbuda has also established several parks to make sure that we cannot have the conversation without development. But first, you have to protect what needs protecting. And this is something that is ongoing, and it's not easy to do that. The second thing is that we have to make sure that NGOs, community groups, all of us are included in the protection process. And this is something that we're doing. So under the Sustainable Island Resource Framework Fund legislation, 15% of all money is going through the fund must go to NGOs. That fund has been established for biodiversity protection, climate change implementation, as well as to general public awareness. And we work a lot with regional and international agencies. We work with Biodiversity Fund, whose board chair is here, so welcome. We work with the Green Climate Fund, we work with the Adaptation Fund, and we work with the Global Environmental Facility. We work with EAG, who's here, and we work with National Parks, who's here. We work with Deborah on projects that we're implementing. And so our biggest work we do is to work to reach out to stakeholders and to reach out to local communities. But I think one of the stakeholders that we would like to reach out more this year and next year is within the area of tourism. And there's a lot more that we need to do. There's a lot more that we are embracing now, which is for me as a director of the department. I think sometimes the cabinet is sometimes a little bit more progressive than even I would imagine. So that is something great. And some new things are being done to embrace sustainability. Well, it just doesn't make sense. We're growing our economy, we're growing tourism, we want to do more to utilize the biodiversity that we have, but everything that we use fossil fuel. So we've received a recent cabinet decision that is going to see distributive energy rolling out into homes in Antigua and Barbuda, and it's slated to reduce our use of fossil fuel by over 40% and reduce the electricity bill of many of our consumers, because the electricity bill is going to go up because they have to use air conditioning now, and then with the AC, with the solar panel system, it's going to go down. And that is going to be funded through the SIRMM fund, which the minister pointed out. So we have a lot to do. The cabinet have put a lot on us, which is great. We are excited about that. We, meaning at the Department of Environment, on all our stakeholders who are here. And we just want to say that we are here to help everybody, including the tourism industry. We want to make sure that the development takes place with, we believe that a high quality product is one that makes money and protect the environment. And that is not mutually exclusive. And we are here to assist in any way possible to facilitate that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, at the previous session, we were talking about linkages, and you mentioned, of course, the connection between the national parks and tourism. And we also, not to extend, but culture in some way and the community, right? In specific when it comes to development. Okay, we proceed now with Janella Bradshaw.
Greetings, everyone. As you heard, my name is Janella Bradshaw, and I am here to talk about my favorite offshore island, soon to be your favorite offshore island, Redonda. So let me see the hands of those in here who have heard about Redonda. Yes, man, action, no comedy. Well, in case you didn't raise your hand, you're not being left out. I am here to share Redonda's remarkable restoration story to you, which this island was transformed from rats to riches.
Yeah, come on now.
Okay. Well, the clicker don't want to work. Oh, great. So firstly, I want to start. I work for this fantastic organization called the Environmental Awareness Group, also known as EAG. And EAG has been Antigua and Barbuda's most long-standing environmental NGO at the forefront of conservation for over 30 years. Thank you, wow. Here at the EAG, we aim to have a society where everyone cares, loves, values the ecosystem, and just wants to protect the wildlife of Antigua and Barbuda. And one of the core programs here at the Environmental Awareness Group is Redonda. Okay, what a lot of people don't know is that Redonda is the third island of our country, and that is in our institution. So we are actually a tri-state island called Antigua, Barbuda, and Redonda. But as you can see in this map, Redonda is not really in the backyard like our other offshore islands. You can see Jumpy Bay, you can see Great Bird Island. Redonda is some distance away, approximately 56 kilometers southwest from St. John's. However, despite Redonda being situated closer to Nevis and Montserrat, she is still ours. And Redonda's value is none to be contested, especially when we think about our biodiversity there. So this is how Christopher Columbus saw Redonda in 1493 when he was rediscovering the islands. But as you can see from this depiction, Redonda is lush, it's thriving, you see the birds flying, you see it's this big rock in the middle of the Caribbean. Said at this point that you could not walk on the island without walking on a bird egg. Just imagine how many birds was nesting on Redonda. And Redonda is highly important to us because it has a high nesting seabird population. And we even have these wonderful species of boobies on the island, and we even have 1% of the brown booby living on our 1 mile long island of Redonda. And to me, I like to view Redonda as the Galapagos of the Caribbean, okay? A prize jewel. But guess what, people? It does not stop there. We have reptile species that you cannot find anywhere else on the world. They're fully 100% local, endemic, and critically endangered. And this is so beautiful because islands are a hotspot for extinctions, and we really have to protect what is ours. So what is the problem with Redonda? This is how we saw Redonda in 2008. This is the complete opposite to what I have been describing. This island is dry, it's eroded. You can see there has been a lot of erosion. The cliffs were crumbling into the sea. And this is due to the impact of invasive alien species, specifically black rats and feral goats. And you may ask, but how the rats and the goats got to Redondo? Well, guess what? This is a little history class. In the late 1800s, there was a mine established on Redondo. So there were so many seabirds nesting. You know, we always hustling. We always want to make a dime. We always want to make $1. Somebody say, well, let's go and put a mine on Redondo and mine the bird poop. And that is what they did for fertilizers and for phosphates. And during this setup, this is when the rats, you know, rats are good stories. This is when they were introduced to the island and they brought over goats as a source of livestock. So the Guado miners left behind a huge population of these black rats. And let me tell you, I don't know about the rats you have encountered, but these rats ate everything. Once they were finished with the vegetation, they started to eat the lizards, they started to eat the birds, and then guess what, people? They were even eating themselves. I kid you not. And then you had all these feral goats as well. And you know, goats are grazers, so they were scaling the mountains, the cliffs of Redondo, and the entire island was on a demise. So what we did, we said, this was a call to action. So EAG, along with the government, the Department of Environment, Forestry, Fisheries, our international partners, Fauna and Flora, Rewild, we came together and we said, we are going to have to save Redondo. So said, so done. What we had to do first was to remove those invasive species. So we had a team living on the island for 2 months. And for every day in 2 months, you see all those dots on the screen, people? They had to visit each dot and distribute bait to ensure that they were getting all of the rat population. Now you may ask, why every 40 meters? Well, for a rat, everything a rat needs is within a 40-meter radius. So it's church, it's supermarket, it's gas station, it's gym, it's work, it's always within 40 meters. And as you can see, there's some dots are located around the cliffs. So what we had to do is get a team of mountaineers who had to distribute this bait. And this is an important story to why conservation matters. I always tell people the approach that EAG and its partners took with Redondo was very a passive approach. All we did was to remove the species that did not belong there. And then after doing so, completing this feat, we saw the island rebound in front of our own eyes. After completing the eradication, and this is almost a year later, you can see how lush, you can see how green, even the camera quality increased, man. But you can see the island was just thriving. And it wasn't just the vegetation. Y'all distracted me. The nesting seabird population came back. You saw an increase in the endemic reptile. You saw a whole ecosystem starting to rebound. And that's the power of restoration. That's the power of conservation. And that's the power of rewilding. So this is just a photo to show you where we came from and where we're going. And it's only improvements when it comes to Redondo. And for us here, I know the story is sweet, but guess what? It didn't stop there. We as a country said we have to declare Redondo and its surrounding seas as a protected area. So in August of 2023, Redondo was officially declared a protected area. And listen, it is the biggest, the largest marine protected area in the Eastern Caribbean. And as you can see here, this black line is the parameter of this protected area. And what's so interesting with this is that the government said, hey, EAG, saving islands from extinction is your bread and butter. So we are going to give you the managing authority to continue to do this. And this is the first example in our country where a protected area is being managed by an NGO. And here at the EAG, we want to ensure you that the Redondo ecosystem is not only going to be a protected area on paper, but it's going to be one that is functional. So listen, everything takes money. Conservation is not cheap. Let me tell you something. And the thing at the EAG, we are actually 95% donor dependent. That is not a good statistic. And with all that's been going on, with our ODA status changing and not being able to tap into the type of resources, we have to come together as a team and we have to say, what can we do? Because we can't stop the work. Because if we are not protecting this island and the other islands we focus on, who else is doing it? Nobody knows me. Exactly, no one. So we are then saying, listen, we're conservationists, we're environmentalists. How can we then generate income from just letting people enjoy and take part, participate in the work that we're doing? And that's kind of the root or the idea that we're doing now at the EAG. We want to be a part of that sustainable tourism, because here in Antigua and Barbuda, we are much more than the beach and the sun. And as you said, it's just the beginning. We're doing great work in conservation that's locally led, and we want people to participate and to support us and to give back. So we're here trying to see what we can do to, have our seat at the table. And we're so happy that we have the Tourism Authority who is helping us, holding our hand, because you see, I know you see that it says Antigua Barbuda, but it's Antigua Barbuda and Redondo. So if you're going anywhere, make sure you see what are your local NGO groups and support the work that they're doing. And it's locally led conservation is very important. And my last note is that, as Minister alluded to in the beginning, this work is being done by people. And the people are so important, and we have to continue to support the people that are doing this good work. And as we say at the EAG, everything we do is for the benefit of people and wildlife.
Thank you, Janella. Very inspiring. And we were talking earlier about best practices and ensuring that we share all of these successes across the world, and definitely Redonda's story will be heard. So thank you so much. We continue the conversation. Rulio Camacho will be our next presenter.
Thank you. So that's quite a presentation for me to follow, but I promise you guys I'll try and do my best. So what I want to talk to you guys today is about marine matters, particularly looking at coral reefs and reef restoration, right? And often, next slide, please. Thank you. So the main meat of the matter is coral reefs. And what I want to start with is, what is a coral reef? So people come to the Caribbean, we talk about our turquoise waters, the clear seas, and really and truly the coral reef is that foundation of our marine ecosystem. The example I like to use is that if you take a bottle of water, you can look through it because there's very little content in it. Our clear water is a very low nutrient. Right? And it's the reason why we love it so much. There's local sayings, you can find things in the water without needing your diving glass. But these coral reefs form this oasis within this desert, this very clear, low nutrient water desert. And because of that, they support this entire marine ecosystem. So the rich biodiversity, the fish life that you talk about, some of the aspects even within the Redondo Marine area that we're working on, is really because we have these coral reefs within our area. But not only that, coral reefs are incredibly important because they provide quite a revenue stream. One back, please. Thank you. Yeah. So they provide quite a revenue stream. They're very important for the economy. They support livelihoods, they support food security, they're very important for coastal resilience. So the minister talked about the impact of storms that we're having. Coral reefs can reduce up to 80% of wave energy, right? And that's something that you cannot really engineer. So having healthy reefs protect all of us. Additionally, they're very important for ecotourism. So you find a lot of persons now, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but persons appreciate that environmental aspect a lot more. When you have healthy ecosystems, when you have healthy reefs, when you can snorkel in, you can see a turtle, or you can see many different types of fish species, and you hear the sounds of the reef, and you see the pretty colors. It is really something that it's a kind of awe-inspiring moment. And if we work to protect this, is very important, right? So, within Antigua and Barbuda, however, we have had different kind of pressures, right? And so I'm gonna start with one of the main ones. Is persons often look at tourism and reef conservation as being two opposite sides of the coin, right? And there is some there's some weight in that, because you can have issues from development, you can have runoff, you can have poor sewage management, you can have wastewater, you can have changes in how persons anchoring on reef, etc., which can be linked to tourism. And there's articles and studies that look at how tourism has had an impact on the marine ecosystem. And I'm going to bring this back only how start thinking about how we can be more beneficial to these natural ecosystems, in particular coral reefs, but also thinking about ecosystems on a whole. The additional big issue that we faced is climate change. So this is a picture here. This is one of the corals that we monitor quite frequently. And over the last 2 years, we've had, and NOAA actually came out and said we've lost 60 or 70% of reefs have been affected by bleaching globally. Within the Caribbean over the last 2 years, we've had this elevated sea temperature as a result of coral bleaching, as a result of climate change, has actually affected our reefs immensely. Within certain nurseries, we've lost up to 100% of all tissue, of all living coral within these nursery systems, right? And it's to the point where you actually consider that there are issues happening that we may not be able to correct. So when we talk about the pressures that we're facing on reefs, it's not just things that me and you are doing on a day-to-day basis. They're global pressures that we have very little impact on, which actually puts greater emphasis on our ability to make the change necessary so that we can give everything a helping hand. I like to say it's like if you have a fever, you don't want to have a broken leg, a runny throat, a sore throat. You don't want to have all these other things affecting you. If you have a fever, you just want to deal with the fever. You don't want to have all these other issues. So it's our duty to ensure that reefs only have these 1 or 2 things to deal with. And whatever we can do to make a difference, we're doing it to make a difference. So one of the things that we look at is coral restoration. And so coral restoration can take many different paths, but essentially what we're trying to do is take the reef from being in a degraded state and using whether passive or active restoration, whether it's growing corals in the field or growing them within a lab. But the idea is to increase the amount of live coral, because you have to think about your live coral like your hotel. We're in a lovely hotel right now, it holds a lot of people. The bigger your reefs, the more things they hold. The more things they hold, the healthier they are. The healthier they are, the more it supports food security, the more it supports economies, the more it supports your livelihoods. So it's really this loop that you want to get to. And what we're trying to do is move from that bottom, I think it's going to be a bottom left picture, to your bottom right picture, right? And it's a process that takes time, because I think persons often think it's a overnight thing. Corals take 10 to 15 years for them to recover, right? It's not an overnight process. It's something that we have to continually work on. And we have to continue to work on when these other pressures change. And so the pipeline, how we look at building resilience, is really looking at this entire thing. We're looking at, we have a nursery system, we're looking at creating, encouraging this nursery, then going to outplanting and monitoring. And with monitoring, what we're also doing is trying to build resilience by seeking out the things that are doing better. So one of the things that we've learned from the climate change and the coral bleaching issues of the last 2 years is searching and collaborating, not just within Antigua and Barbuda, and actually Redonda, because we actually have some specimens in Redonda that we're looking at, but also throughout the Caribbean region. Caribbean partners are all sharing information with each other about who's doing what, what's working, what's the factors that are causing this area to do a little better than this area, and how do you share those factors? Because at the end of the day, healthy reefs help everyone, especially on a small island state like Antigua and Barbuda. Healthy reefs are critical to everyone. And so, coming back to my first point, tourism and conservation can actually coexist, right? There are ways that you can ensure that your tourist actions are actually helping the reef system. It doesn't always have to be that you think, oh, you have this cruise ship and you have to dredge this harbor, etc., etc. You can also be supporting initiatives. You can also ensure that you're following best practices, right? And I think that's what's important to bring into the conversation, so that we don't look at it as 2 separate factors, but we look at it as a togetherness factor. And so one of the things, one more? Yeah. So one of the vision. So this is actually pre-bleaching, unfortunately. But what we need things like this to be more regular. This is a single living healthy elk-horn, and the amount of fish that are around it just from that one colony. And if you hear the older folks of our localities speak about it, this was the norm. These golden hues were everywhere. This is what persons saw on a regular basis, and they took for granted because it was everywhere. And now we're struggling to find things like this, but this is what we're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, as this quote says, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So what does it mean, especially given the length of coral regrowth, what does it mean for the future generations? And what actions are we going to take today and tomorrow and yesterday to make sure that in 10 years, 15 years, we can be like, you know what, it's because we're able to do this. It's because we decided to maybe take a little bit more time and put a little bit more resources, but do this extra step to ensure that we're playing our part in protecting this environment. So, and in that, I always try and do a do's and don'ts, right? So it's a call to action. And there's simple steps, there's larger steps, and then there's huge steps, right? If you have deep pockets, we always welcome support, because that's always a good thing. But there's simple stuff. So reef safe sunscreen is one of the simple things you can do, right? Be aware of what you're promoting to your market and ensure that you're doing this in an environmentally friendly way, right? Support local conservation initiatives. We're a small island developing state. What happens on the land affects the ocean. What happens in the ocean affects the land. So whether you're supporting redundant restoration, whether you're supporting different aspects, whether you're supporting mangrove stuff, it all still plays a linkage, and it's important to ensure that we're doing that. And then the simple stuff is don't encourage anchoring on reefs. People like to stand and collect corals and take them with them and not realizing how much of an impact that can be. The beaches that we love so much are dependent on these reefs being there. And again, coming back to this climate change issue, if we lose the reefs, the next big storm will mean we lose our coastline. And we're having major flooding. So these connections are fast scale. And so your actions matter, right? Healthy reefs support life, they support livelihoods, and they support future generations. So we all have a part to play. And so on that, just want to end with this very lovely image here, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Julio, for that very quick but very impactful overview from a coral reef's perspective. And our last panelist, Dr. Deborah Brosnan.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up so I can see you all and move this. First of all, I want to acknowledge all of our speakers. What extraordinary work in terms of conservation and biodiversity. That is amazing. And I want to take, they've said so much, I can hardly build on it, but I do want to build on it and take those messages back into what it means for the hospitality industry and give you basically how does this stand in the global context, how does the Caribbean stand in the global context, and three very specific examples of how we integrate nature, biodiversity into the hospitality, into the travel and tourism trade. So let me start with nature positive and nature forward, accelerating solutions for sustainability, biodiversity, community and return on investment, specifically in travel and tourism. And I want to acknowledge here my co-author, Glenn Madziok, the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. We are working in partnership, really trying to bring nature positive and nature forward tourism to the mainstream. So what is nature positive and nature forward? What it is really identifying what are the ecosystem services, what is the value that nature, that biodiversity and ecosystems give us for free that we take for granted. Whether it is coral reefs breaking 98.7% of wave action, keeping sand on our beaches, protecting our coastline, providing us with an amenity that people want to come visit, whether it is mangroves sustaining us from flooding and giving us great places to kayak. So all of those services that we get for nature are embedded in what we do and certainly should be embedded in our tourism industry. Sorry, the next one. There was a time when the environment was seen as an impediment, when it was seen as something that was nice to have, and then when funds went low, the funding dropped out. And it was seen as a hurdle by many developers, including in the tourism industry. Not anymore. Sustainable tourism has now risen to some of the highest levels in leadership governments around the world. King Charles, for instance, has now come out and said, we must remember that nature sustains us, and nature is part of the value chain, and is really looking to see how can tourism be more integrated into, basically into the nature value chain and vice versa. We're working with the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and I want to point out here, this is 8 million rooms around the world, 66,000 hotels, all of whom are now on board to say tourism can be nature positive, tourism can be a force for good, and pledging to start to leaving the environment better than they found it, leaving the community better. It is a process. But this is now coming into the mainstream. This isn't a nice to have. This isn't something we should do. This is something we are doing. And I think the Caribbean is leading the way, as I'll talk about in a moment. We've talked a lot about collaboration. And we've heard today about many different kinds of collaboration. And one that's important as well is, what is the science? You know, we saw the work Rulio was doing. We see the work the Department of Environment is doing. Being able to bring the science together with the tourism, with the business model, in order to create more sustainable models. But actually things that work. Not, again, talking about it, but actually implementing it. As we say, nature is our ally, science is our tool, partnerships drive progress, and take action. Together we can create thriving and resilient communities. And I want to give you a few examples. The Caribbean, where we are today, most of the islands, anywhere between 50 and 85% of GDP is tourism driven. Most people in the islands work in tourism. It is vitally important. It is the lifeblood of the islands, but people come for nature. They don't come because they want to walk down a street in Manhattan. They come because they want sunshine, because they want nature, because they want a beautiful place to be. And that is what we have to be building on. So what I'd like to do now is just show you 3 examples of where nature has been integrated into the hospitality industry, combining both biodiversity, jobs, but also return on investment, because the tourism industry does need a return on investment in order to continue to grow and to give back. This is the Palmetto Golf Course over in Barbuda. We're very privileged to work in Antigua and Barbuda, and we're privileged because Antigua and Barbuda uniquely is a nation that has seen the importance of biodiversity, seen the value of looking at sustainability, and is working hard to do it. And moving forward in that direction. So this is it's a golf course, and the project I'm telling you about is one that was government approved and planned with the Department of Environment. And I think that underscores too the importance of the government and the importance of environment departments in being engaged collaboratively in moving this forward. When this work started, it was an area in Barbuda that had been heavily sand mined. For over 50 years, somewhere between 20 and 40 million cubic yards of sand was mined. It was the only source of revenue. And along with that, by 1998, local scientists had identified that 96% of the biodiversity assemblage had been lost in that area because of sand mining. And so, in working with the Department of Environment, we developed a plan to say, look, if this development is going forward, it has to create more resilient dunes because the area is subject to flooding. So what you see in the background here, where this vegetation is native, is now 4 meters high. So the dunes are 4 meters high, but the sand had to be repurposed, and in doing so, it created wetlands. There's now 64 species of birds in those wetlands, and the monitoring for the bird species and the wetlands is being done by the local community, which creates a different kind of job. Rather than just in the tourism industry, often it's a service industry, but this is an opportunity to create stewardship and environmental training, which gives us another way to look at tourism. This is a nearby island. This is actually St. Bart's. This dune area did not exist 10 years ago. The area was bought at an $89 million investment, and the owner wanted to build a seawall. It's a beach down here. There was very little beach left. And we said, no, why don't you do a dune restoration? The beach will come and go, but that dune will sustain you from hurricanes. That dune has withstood 4 hurricanes, including Hurricane Irma. And that dune got very badly beaten up, and as you can see, this was last week. It's been restored again. And when the insurance adjuster came out after Hurricane Irma, he said, had you not done that dune restoration, your entire property would have been in the ocean. So for that owner, that developer, that investor, a $200,000 investment in a half-mile of beach sustained an $89 million investment that he'd made, and we've got sea turtles nesting, and there's a beach that everybody in the community uses. So that is, again, with the tourism industry. And then I just want to show you a project that we're working on. Rulio mentioned the importance of coral reefs. Coral reefs do help keep sand on the beach. They protect our environment. And this is a project that I've started with a man called John Paul DeGioia, which is called Ocean Shot. In some areas, when the reef dies, it collapses. So it literally falls down, and the waves come in harder and stronger. In some areas, we do not have reefs, and we are losing beaches. We're working now in areas that are losing up to 30 feet of beach a year in beach width. And this is a challenge to many places in the Caribbean and around the world. Other areas we've worked on have lost 354 feet of beach width over 20 years, and most of that in the last 5 or 10 years. So the question is, how do we sustain these beaches? How do we keep them going and also provide some biodiversity value? So this is, we've been working with a team of scientists and engineers from around the world to actually understand what it is about the reef structure and shape that provides biodiversity habitat and provides stability on the beach. And this was one of the first deployments. These are reef modules that are created to have habitat that were placed in the water off Barbuda, and Julio has been involved in the monitoring and the outplanting of these as well with corals. And these have worked very well in terms of what we've been looking for with biodiversity. Obviously corals are still in need of a lot of help, and with the stability of sand on the beach. We've since been doing that in 2 other areas, and the third one is now on the way up with Mill Reef, focusing on these structures. So these are really just 3 examples of how regeneration, of how working with nature and aligning with nature can fit in with the tourism industry. The future is nature forward. Sustainable tourism is not just a thing of the future, it's already here. Tourism for resilience, community resilience, environmental resilience, economic resilience is already happening, and we in the Caribbean are leading the way. And the stories we have to tell, you've heard some of them here already, are phenomenal. I think getting the message out there, getting more people involved is key, and you all work in this industry, you all have a major role to play. So as you're thinking about your next hospitality value or your next travel and tourism, think about how do you make it sustainable, how do you encourage investors to be sustainable, and how do you get it embedded in the whole community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Again, very insightful. We're getting very close to the end of the session. I would like to offer a few minutes for Minister Fernandez if there are any parting words that you would wish to provide.
I think we need another round of applause. I started by telling you how proud I felt and privileged to be on the panel, and you can see why. And we have decided in the Ministry of Tourism here that our mantra is we intend to leave Antigua better than we met it. And that's something we're working towards. And with good professional people like these, I think we'll be able to accomplish it. So we're working hard, and again, we need to understand that what really attracts people here is something that we can't afford to lose for our children's sake. I remember Mr. Camacho, so to be Dr. Camacho was saying, I remember him speaking about years ago seeing that coral, and I remember as a youngster, skin diving, by the way, which is illegal now, right? Spearfishing and snorkeling sometimes, and how beautiful it was. And I had the privilege of actually going out to the restoration of the coral out at Mill Reef about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And it just broke my heart to see what was there. But the good news is I felt some form of redemption in that I saw what was being done to actually bring the reefs back, some of it back to life. So I think it was important for us to have had this session. I think all of us need to understand how important sustainable tourism, and again, not just the infrastructural aspect of it, but to get our people that work within the industry to really benefit from it. Because that is really, truly our greatest resource. Any property, any restaurant, anybody would tell you that people that come here would tell you they're coming back. As a matter of fact, last year, I think it was, or early this year, we had a visitor who came for his 100th time to a particular property. And he said he came there because of the people. I mean, and everybody was on a first name basis. So again, our people, not to take away from everything else that was said, but our people, I think, are key to a lot of how we benefit in the industry. So once again, thank you.
Thank you. The microphone wants to stay in. Thank you, Minister, for those words. And if we can have a picture with the panelists on stage. And as we wrap up, I would like to invite to the stage CHTA's President Sanapni to stand for some final remarks.
That means we're in good hands.
In the meantime, just some housekeeping remarks. The first set of buses departing will be at 3:15 because to accommodate access of the buses, we will be leaving by zone. So anyone in zone
technology, of course, but also HI, human intelligence. Things that we are going to commit to at CHTA, and hopefully you as well will commit to in your own destinations, in your own businesses. If you don't know by now that CHTA is action-oriented, you only have to look at my predecessors, and the work that was done during the pandemics, during the hurricanes, everything that has been done to get us back on our feet every time we've been knocked back by some sort of challenge. And if that is not enough, we've had some successes of the advocacy-wise, whether it is with regards to tax incentives that we help to prevent from being revoked in Dominican Republic, to our work with the U.S. Trade Representative to ensure that certain tariffs and port fees that were going to be put in place for Chinese-built ships did not happen or were not put in place for the Caribbean, and so many other advocacy things that we have done that have helped our members. So that shows that we are action-oriented, and we don't just talk about things, we actually do it. We don't wait for change to happen, we are a big part of pushing that change forward. So I made a list of a few things that I gathered, and just 5 things very quickly that I am committing CHTA to. Sorry, Vanessa, I haven't even spoken to you on half of them. But first, we're going to use the data and insights that we got from MasterCard, Forward Keys and Tourism Economics. Tourism Economics, Forward Keys, MasterCard, we only brought the best of the best here to you when it came to insights. And I'm sure that you agree that you got some of the best insights possible. And yes, there's a storm ahead. Yes, there are potential challenges ahead. Not with everything wouldn't. But there are opportunities ahead as well in festival tourism, sports tourism, and alternative markets such as Latin America and Canada, according to data from Forward Keys. Opportunities potentially to benefit from the decline in inbound travel to the USA, especially from, did you know the Caribbean itself is the largest source of the decline, right, in terms of traffic into the US. That's an opportunity for intra-Caribbean travel. And also, there are opportunities in adventure tourism, cultural tourism, and food tourism, which makes, and all the things that make us unique, cultural tourism in particular, based on the information from MasterCard. It's our commitment to make sure that you are armed with all of these insights to ensure that you are able to make the most of the situation ahead. Secondly, we are going to wrap up our advocacy repository project, by August of this year, to help long before our AGM, to help inform the activities of CHTA and our partner HTAs. Thirdly, we are going to encourage the development of an intra-Caribbean travel-focused task force committee of sorts that is cross-collaborative between the public and private sector to help implement some of these practical insights that we heard today with respect to taxation, regulation, easy movement of our people, getting the right kind of aircraft, which was a very interesting point that was made by Mario, and the right type of regional marketing techniques to unlock the potential that exists among the 40 million people that are here in the Caribbean. Fourthly, we're going to double down, surprise, surprise, on the focus on linkages. That's something that I've said is one of the three things that I want to focus on: linkages, people development, and technology. But it's so interesting to see how linkages is linked to intra-Caribbean travel and the importance of that from getting goods around the region as well. But we are going to implement, Nicola, that demand study, and I am committing today that the CHTA is going to fund that demand study to document those best practices. Yes, Nicola, you're going to get your money. Again, Jim is not there, he's a treasurer as well, but don't worry, we'll talk to him later. And to document those best practices that exist when it comes to incentivizing linkages, such as what we see in St. Lucia and other islands. And to work with our People Development Committee and the CHTA Education Foundation. Sorry, Caroline, I haven't spoken to you about that as yet. But I think that there are ways to provide the training needed to potential entrepreneurs in the region to get those skills that allow them to go into those businesses that allow them to benefit from the tourism dollar. Finally, in collaboration with the Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism, we're going to help foster more examples and success stories like what we saw in Redondo, which is truly, truly, truly incredible, to create not just sustainable tourism, but regenerative tourism, which is of strategic importance, not just in terms of attracting new business from people who care about sustainable tourism, but also to ensure that we leave the Caribbean better than we get it for locals and visitors alike. We also, of course, I have to mention, CAST has a lot of scholarships with regards to marine health, and a coral restoration guide, which is available to CHTA members, which would be of interest, I think, to many of you who depend on the dive sector and the marine sector in general. So yes, folks, CHTA Marketplace, the point where we start to focus on how do we make more money starts tomorrow, but the work of shaping a stronger, more resilient, and more prosperous Caribbean for our people, that starts today. Let's get to it. Safe travels, everyone. See you tonight.